This week, the Jews are tired is back from a break, but the news never takes a break. So we're playing some catch-up and focusing this episode on a symbol of Jewish unity, the rally. Specifically, recent rallies against anti-Semitism in New York City and Minneapolis, why they happened, and what we can learn from them. I'm Lev Gringaus, and welcome to The Jews Are Tired, your podcast about Jewish news. So let's get into the background before talking about the recent rallies. Basically, with increasing regularity, Jews have been getting viciously attacked in the New York City area for the past few months. In fact, for the past few years, this has been the case. Most of the victims have been openly visible Jews, by which I mean Orthodox Jews who dress in an identifiably Jewish way, and most of the perpetrators of these attacks have been African Americans. Now, to clarify, most anti-Semitic acts overall in New York are perpetrated by white people, but in these specific instances, it's been overwhelmingly African Americans attacking Orthodox Jews. And no, there's no clear answer on why exactly this is happening and why exactly now. One last side note, Orthodox Judaism is very diverse, and there are many different groups I'm including under that label who would not necessarily agree with that label. But out of practical necessity, as I can't list every group in this podcast that has been attacked, that's the label I'll be using. So, in early December, a man and a woman loosely associated with an extremist fringe group of Black Hebrew Israelites shot up a kosher grocery store in Jersey City, New Jersey, ultimately leaving 5 people dead. Then, over the course of December, and particularly during the 8-day holiday of Hanukkah, there were Orthodox Jews being attacked quite literally every day. By attacked, I mean everything from Jews being yelled at and spat at to being physically assaulted. And then, on December 28th, a man with a machete walked into a rabbi's house during a Hanukkah party in Monsey, New York, and attacked 5 people before running away. And that last attack is what sparked the decision to put on a rally against anti-Semitism in New York City and to stand in solidarity against what Orthodox Jews have been facing. So on short notice, Jewish organizations put together a rally titled No Hate, No Fear for Sunday, January 5th, and roughly 25,000 people showed up. It was kind of amazing. Progressive Jews marched alongside Trump-loving Jews. Pretty much the entire alphabet soup of Jewish organizations signed on to co-sponsor, and different Jewish denominations marched across the Brooklyn Bridge together. To give you a window into that, here's something progressive Orthodox writer Elad Neharai tweeted after the rally. Quote, "For those who don't see any good at all in Jewish legacy organizations, the march today is a testament to their power and potential. No one else can bring together such a diverse group of Jews. No one else could have made it this big. That matters despite all the flaws." End quote. Still, Jews are Jews, and the New York City rally served as a moment of unity, but also highlighted some notable and complicated issues. First of all, almost no Orthodox Jewish organizations signed on to organize or co-sponsor the rally. It was largely put together and mostly attended by non-Orthodox Jews, and this is something worth walking through in some detail. Here's what Jacob Kornblue, a reporter for the Orthodox news site Jewish Insider, tweeted before the rally. Quote, "Lots of chatter in the Orthodox and Hasidic community whether to attend tomorrow's Solidarity March. They claim there was no outreach and no organized effort to get members of the community who are victims of most anti-Semitic attacks to attend or speak at rally." End quote. It ended up that Orthodox organizations like the Orthodox Union and Agudat Israel were, in fact, invited to co-sponsor the rally, but chose not to, even as its leaders attended. And there were Orthodox speakers at the rally. But this issue of outreach to the community and how the community perceived outreach still became a reason for many Orthodox Jews to stay home. Here's an excerpt from a Facebook post by Orthodox LGBTQ activist Shauna Levin, which was shared pretty widely. In full disclosure, I shared Levin's post on my Facebook feed. Levin wrote, quote, "I won't be marching. As a queer activist and ally to marginalized people, I have always lived by a primary rule of allyship. Do not tell a vulnerable community what they need. Do not decide for them and expect accolades in return. Rather, listen to the community, hear what they say they need. Show up for them as they ask of you. I spoke with many Orthodox friends and family. Not one liked the Solidarity March. So Levin then went on to describe some of the options that her friends and family preferred to organizing a rally, and some criticism was also raised of there not being a dedicated gender-segregated space at the rally for Orthodox Jews for whom gender segregation in public is normal. Generally, the Orthodox community prefers spiritual responses to public events. So the community would have preferred, quote, a day of prayer, a few hours where people walked around with charity boxes where every Jew and holy non-Jew took opportunities to do a mitzvah or a good deed. A day of coming closer to Torah to take one thing for one moment. One Friday where half of New York City lit Shabbos candles, end quote. While Levin framed the issue through the perspective of allyship and social justice, and that language might not be shared with many of the Orthodox Jews who didn't attend the rally, the sentiment behind it is very real. And it also raises some serious questions. When Orthodox Jews are attacked, is it right for non-Orthodox Jews to put on a rally of solidarity independently organized of the Orthodox community? At the same time, anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism, and why shouldn't non-Orthodox Jews be able to express support and solidarity in public expressions of their choosing? And why, if Orthodox organizations were offered the option to co-sponsor and be involved, why did they decide not to do that? I'm not sure these questions have any satisfying answers, but they're important questions to consider nonetheless. And there is still more complexity in the matter of Orthodox representation at the rally. For example, there's an ongoing controversy in New York over how much secular education some Orthodox religious institutions do offer or should be offering their students. And while this is a longer conversation for another podcast, suffice it to say that there are many Jewish critics of these Orthodox schools where students barely have basic math skills. And at least one Orthodox speaker at the rally against anti-Semitism in New York City made the case that it was these Jewish critics of Orthodox schools who encouraged anti-Semitic attacks because they openly criticized the community and made Orthodox Jews fair game for everybody else. Now, I am going to blatantly insert my opinion here. I think that's a horrible thing to say and that it's meant to shut down any and all legitimate criticism of the Orthodox community, which is wrong. At the same time, that is a view held by some Orthodox Jews, and there is a question about how a rally does or doesn't mainstream that kind of view, which ties any criticism of the Orthodox community to literally causing attacks on Jews. But there wasn't just the complexity of Orthodox representation at play. Some Jews avoided the rally and criticized it because they felt it was a hypocritical kind of solidarity. Here's something Ben Folding, a black Orthodox Jew, wrote on Twitter. Quote, 2 years ago, a black man named Sahid Vassal was shot and killed by cops in Crown Heights. The next day, there was a march starting at the spot where he was murdered to the local precinct. I asked members of the Orthodox Jewish community to show up for their neighbor. I was mostly laughed at and rebuffed. Maybe 2 to 3 people showed. Many made jokes, some made false accusations that there would be riots. There was no solidarity, and that's why I can't come to any march. Solidarity is a two-way street. For members of the Jewish establishment who have turned a blind eye towards others suffering or even supported policies of terror, to demand solidarity or even request it now, it's outrageous, end quote. Still others criticized the rally because Zionist and pro-Israel groups organized and co-sponsored, with there being 2 primary points about this. Ideologically, many of the Orthodox Jews that have been attacked aren't necessarily Zionists or pro-Israel, and also, just thinking about it, is it right to bring Israeli flags to a rally about American anti-Semitism? And look, I'm sure that some people are wondering why I'm bringing up all of these various criticisms of the rally, no matter how big or how small or seemingly fringe. And my honest answer is, look, 25,000 people showed up. In so many ways, the rally was a huge success, but rallies don't exist in a vacuum, and I don't believe it's enough to get together and then say, look, we got together, it felt good, it looked good, cool. And we can't forget that the reason for doing this rally, the attacks on Orthodox Jews in the New York City area, is complicated. The reason is complicated both in its facts and in the way it's filtered through the different parts of Jewish society. And these issues, Orthodox representation, Jewish solidarity with other minority communities, how rallies can push certain narratives, and how many Jews bring Israel into just about every single conversation about anti-Semitism, these issues are at play everywhere. For example, a similar rally against anti-Semitism in Minneapolis, called Minnesota No Hate, No Fear, was held last week on January 7th, 2 days after the New York City rally. And just like in New York, no Orthodox organizations signed on to co-sponsor, and with the speed that the rally was organized, Orthodox organizations weren't really involved in planning either, and people were concerned about that. Now, those concerns were alleviated once we all found out that there were several Orthodox speakers at the Minnesota rally, but still, it goes to show that not all New York City Jewish issues are unique to the East Coast. And by the way, if you want to check out more about the Minnesota rally, TC Jewfolk's coverage is linked in the podcast notes. So let's end this episode on a somewhat lighter note. As Rabbi Mordechai Lightstone, the social media editor for Chabad.org, wrote on Twitter about the New York City rally, quote, "Things heard at the march. Why are the speakers so right-wing? Why are the speakers so left-wing? Why are the speakers religious? Why aren't the speakers religious? Why are there many Chabadniks? Why aren't there more Chabadniks? Well, we can fairly say, at least the Jews showed up." End quote. And as to the lingering question of whether it really means anything that the Jews showed up at a rally, here's an excerpt of Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz's speech at the Minnesota rally last week. And you can decide for yourself what it means for a community to show up and hear this message from an elected official.
My message to you is one that I want to leave no doubts about as the honor and the privilege and the responsibility of being governor of Minnesota. My first responsibility in this job is the safety and security of all Minnesotans. You have my pledge and the commitment that of the authority that I have and the resources of the entire state of Minnesota will be brought to bear that every single one of you can feel safe in your communities, safe in your schools, safe in your worship, and safe in your lives. That is a commitment that we make. And as we think about things that we can do together, from safety and providing the resources necessary to provide that, and then thinking further ahead, I want to thank Representative Hornstein, Senator Latz. I know you're thinking about ways that we strengthen our hate crimes laws to make sure that at any place this rises up, that there will be swift and severe punishments for it. I am grateful for that, and I know that this is something that binds us all together, this common thread. And I also want to think about, for all of you, and I want to echo the words that I heard earlier, and thinking about this community of never has been, is not, and never will be defined by anti-Semitism. You will be defined by the contributions to human culture across the spectrum of endeavors. You will be defined by a moral and ethical tradition that is the best that humanity has to offer and shapes the decisions that we make, from democracy to the way we deal with one another. That is the legacy of this community.
This has been this week's The Jews Are Tired podcast. I'm Lev Gringauz. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and hopefully next week, the Jews will get some rest. The Jews Are Tired is a product of Jewfolk Inc. For more information, go to tcjewfolk.com or email the show at podcast@tcjewfolk.com.